To get started, Mary, who just spoke to you, is a friend of mine, and it was kind of through her that I was able to testify at one of the bills that she spoke about last year at the legislative session. I was pregnant at the time, and I had an ultrasound, and so I got to talk about that experience and how the baby was responding to the pressure of the ultrasound probe, and how that was evidence that a baby could, in fact, feel outside influences and pain. However, I just read some information just yesterday. I was researching about that some more, and the claim was that even though there's some evidence that babies in the womb respond to outside stimuli, that doesn't prove that they can feel pain. I don't understand that one. But anyway, I'm glad to report that I have a brand new baby boy. He's 5 months old. He's 12 years younger than all my other children, my daughters, and he is great. I absolutely love him. And so it turns out he really was a baby already at 20 weeks, and he came out of a great, wonderful baby and a wonderful person in addition to our family. I'm here to talk to you today about comprehensive sexuality education. I'm kind of sorry that it gets to be my job to deliver this information, but hopefully it will be helpful to you. I'm from Family Watch International, just so you know who I am. Family Watch is a nonprofit organization that advises UN delegates and other policymakers around the world. And one of our major issues, and has been for the last almost 2 decades, is comprehensive sexuality education. A bill to introduce comprehensive sexuality education in Utah schools was introduced last session by Representative Brian King. This is HB 246, and this is not the first time such a bill has been introduced. Many tries have been made over the years, but this is the most recent one. In advance of this bill being run, there was a public poll taken in Utah. And the question was asked, which approach do you believe Utah schools should take when teaching sex education? And they asked them if they wanted an abstinence-only approach or a comprehensive sexuality approach to teaching sex ed. So I don't have time to go into the problems with that particular question, but the poll results were that 64% of the Utahns polled, which was actually a very, very small sample, 64% of them said that they supported and wanted comprehensive sexuality education. And you may have seen this. It was widely publicized. It was on KSL and everywhere else. So it was meant to be, of course, showing public support for this effort. Well, what is comprehensive sexuality education? They offered no definition of this to the people who were taking the poll, and my strong suspicion is that almost none of them actually knew what comprehensive sexuality education was. It just sounded good. So I'm going to tell you what it is. If you Google it, you'll bring up some lovely definitions, and one of them will be from SECUS. SECUS is the Sexuality Education and Information Council of the United States. It's not actually part of our government, but they've made themselves sound that way. And this is their definition. Comprehensive sex education includes age-appropriate, medically accurate information on a broad set of topics related to sexuality, including human development, relationships, decision-making, abstinence, contraception, and disease prevention. What's so bad about that? That sounds actually pretty good to a lot of people. Not too scary. That's great. Well, keep in mind that SECUS is a supporter of and provider of comprehensive sexuality education. This is their business that they're in, supporting this. So it sounds great, but is their definition really true as it plays out in real life? The words age-appropriate and evidence-based and medically accurate are always used to defend CSE, or comprehensive sexuality education, and they were used extensively by Brian King last session, and he assured us that it would all be so wonderful and we'd all love it. But you would be surprised at what is considered age-appropriate by the people who push CSE. And I don't have time to go into a lot of those details today, but they are shocking, and they're certainly not what you and I would consider to be age-appropriate for our children to be learning about sexuality. So who advocates for CSE? There are many, many entities that do, but 2 of the main ones are SECUS, as I mentioned, and the other one that we all know of is International Planned Parenthood Federation. They've been growing stronger through the years, and International Planned Parenthood Federation, or IPPF as I'll call it, is the largest purveyor of CES in the world. Now, listen to a statement from their very own values statement. It says, sexual and reproductive health rights should be guaranteed for everyone because they are internationally recognized human rights. So there's a right to sex, according to them, and to sexual information and sexual services, including abortion, contraception, and different services of that type. These are services that you need when you're participating in sexual intercourse. When you read, if you look at some of the foundational documents of IPPF, the key philosophies of CSE become clear, and I'm going to cite 3 of them. The first one is, sexual pleasure is a right. Now this sounds odd, but this is what they say. It's a quote from their own document. Young people are entitled to sexual pleasure, and how to experience different forms of sexual pleasure is important to their health and well-being. The second key philosophy of CSE, sexual pleasure should be pursued by people of all ages without connection to marriage or childbearing. Here's a quote from their materials. Sexuality and sexual pleasure are important parts of being human for everyone, no matter what age, no matter if you are married or not, and no matter if you want to have children or not. You notice there's no restriction, no age restriction whatsoever in their thinking about sex. The third principle, parents or others who try to limit children's sexual activities or access to sexual information, birth control, or abortion violate their children's sexual rights. And if I encourage you, if you're interested in this topic, Google IPPF exclaim and read the exclaim document. You'll be stunned. It goes on and on like this. It's a big declaration of children's sexual rights and how parents should not interfere with those. So just to give you a taste, this is IPPF, International Planned Parenthood Federation. We always hear about Planned Parenthood. Most of the time we're talking about our American version of that. They're all the same. They're connected to the same gigantic head. They have 7 regional offices around the world, thousands of service points, and they have huge influence. They develop materials that promote comprehensive sexuality education. Well, why would they do that? Because they earn money off of providing sexual services. So the push for CSE is enormous internationally, as I've mentioned. International Planned Parenthood Federation is very active at the United Nations, has consultative status. They kind of rule the roost there on these matters. Nationally, our outgoing federal administration, of course, we know defended or made efforts to defend and did defend some abstinence-based sexual education and sponsored other initiatives and support other initiatives that are in support of CSE. And then locally, as we know, there's bills at the legislature and now a lawsuit challenging Utah law that complicates this issue. But I want you to realize the goal of the global drivers of this movement is to have CSE established as a right for all children and established in all schools across the world. So the challenge is not unique to Utah. It's been a target for a while, but the pressure is growing here for us. So we really need to understand this issue. Okay, my organization has produced a documentary on CSE. I'm not going to show most of it to you because honestly it's disturbing material. I would encourage you to watch it if you would like to on your own time. I've specifically chosen just a few minutes, 2 little segments that I'm going to show to you that are still not okay, but I hope they're not too disturbing for you. The first one will show an example of an actual CSE program. And it happens to be the one, it's called It's All One, and it's the one that has been widely supported by our nation, like the United States UN diplomats at the UN and the Obama administration. So let me find it very quickly for you. I think, actually, sorry, my cursor has disappeared. Okay.
With a partner of the same or opposite sex.
You don't have the sound, do you? Dang it.
The It's All One curriculum, also promoted by International Planned Parenthood, reveals the multiple manipulative tactics used to indoctrinate and sexualize children through CSE.
Can you hear?
Like other CSE programs, It's All One claims, among other things, to be evidence-based, comprehensive, human rights, gender-sensitive, and culturally appropriate education that will increase young people's responsible decision-making, to reduce adolescent rates of pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections, including HIV. It's All One, however, like most CSC programs, is really just cleverly disguised abortion rights, sexual pleasure education, masquerading as human rights, gender, and sexual and reproductive health education. It aggressively promotes abortion with over 112 references to abortion. It's All One has an obsessive focus on sexual pleasure, mentioning sexual pleasure 62 times. It promotes multiple sex acts and instructs children on how to stimulate themselves or their partner to orgasm. To explore their readiness, children fill out a worksheet that infers children are ready to have sex when you are feeling sexually attracted to the other person, and when you're feeling comfortable about telling the other person what feels good sexually. It teaches that human rights encompass sexual rights, including alleged rights to all persons to sexual expression and the right to seek sexual pleasure. Hooking children on sex is a multi-billion-dollar business for Planned Parenthood and other similar organizations. This is because children, or prospects, once sexualized, become Planned Parenthood customers, dependent upon their services. Comprehensive sexuality
I'm gonna
education
skip ahead.
programs are disguised under many names.
Sorry, or?
They may be called
Sorry, it's the little bar for me to skip forward is not appearing. Tech guy, can you help me? Usually it just pops up when I move it, I don't know.
That's the next one?
Yeah, that's the next slide, this is it. Oop, it's just black, yeah,
Okay.
but it's not.
What is your name, Tech guy?
You know, well, maybe we won't get to see that. It was a little bit more inspiring, less disturbing, but I guess we'll just have to move on, unless you have a bright idea really quick.
No, unfortunately.
Okay, he doesn't have any bright ideas, but I'm sure he's very bright anyways. Okay, so we'll move on. So the point is, I was going to show you people from around the world who are fighting CSE, declaring how we need to take back our ownership of our families and demand that teaching about sex is a parent's job. Even if some parents choose not to do that, it's not a job that should be usurped by the schools, especially when illicit materials are being used that parents are not aware of and would certainly not approve of. So anyway, there's a call from around the world. People are fighting this on every front in virtually every nation of the world, and we're able to help some of those people stand strong against it. So right here in Utah, our current Utah law, let's take a look at it. It says that instruction shall stress the importance of abstinence from all sexual activity before marriage and fidelity after marriage as methods preventing certain diseases, and teaching personal skills that encourage individual choice of abstinence and fidelity. If you look, this is what Representative King's bill did. It struck those, it would seek to strike those things from our laws. And then further, currently, our laws prohibit instruction in the intricacies of intercourse, sexual stimulation, or erotic behavior, the advocacy of homosexuality, the encouragement of the use of contraceptive methods, or the advocacy of sexual activity outside of marriage. Look what Representative King's bill would have done. So, just to be clear, Brian King's bill sought to allow instruction in erotic behavior, the intricacies of intercourse, sexual stimulation, and advocating sexual activity outside of marriage. Advocating for sexual experience outside of marriage. Why would the bill call for eliminating these sections of code if they did not intend to teach about these things? They do intend to. Not right away, of course, because everyone freak out, but it is the intent to teach these things in the classroom. Oftentimes, proponents of CSE say that, oh my goodness, the pregnancy rates and teen pregnancy and STD rates are through the roof, and therefore we have to have CSE to solve the problem. This happened in Utah. There were studies, oh look at these alarming and huge increases in the rates of teen pregnancy. Well, there are increases, and they are concerning. They're happening not only in Utah, but around the nation. However, a little bit of context is helpful. If you'll look here, I can't read through all these, but a couple of examples. This is comparing Utah which uses an abstinence-based sex ed teaching model, comparing it to California, which uses a comprehensive sexuality model.
Oh, you have no idea.
So, yeah. So, our results are way, way better. And California, just look at an example. On the syphilis rates, we're 38th. We're that low in the ranking of all the states for the syphilis rates of infection. California is second in the nation. Another example, gonorrhea, 44th. Utah ranks 44th out of the 50 states on infection rates. And California ranks 12th. So why in the world would we choose to follow in their footsteps? And yes, it sounds very alarming. You hear things that say, there was a 49% increase in gonorrhea rates in Utah. That sounds alarming. But when our rate is already so small and it increases, then out of context, it sounds bigger than it is. So we need to keep that in mind as these arguments come our way. And this is about for disease, it affects 0.2794% of the total population. And so this was, I'm sorry, I forgot to put which disease that was referring to, and now I can't remember. Anyways, that was a certain disease. So don't be fooled by these things. So, and by the way, abstinence-based education already allows us to teach about STDs and contraceptives. That's already allowable under our law. So we don't need to change to accommodate that. Let me finish up. So there's a step-by-step process that we've seen happen over and over, and Utah is the target right now of how to implement CSE. You make a public outcry about it. You take a poll, say everyone loves it. Then you say because we have all these problems, we need to solve it. Then you get it adopted by saying it will be only opt-in, only if you want it. And of course, then that will be changed to opt-out. You have to have it unless you say no. And then it gets changed to mandatory for all students. That's just the way it goes all the time. Utah is on step 2. With high pressure to move to step 3. And we can't let that happen. So what can we do very briefly? Oppose bills calling for CSE in any way you possibly can. Support abstinence-based sex ed. I don't have time to go through it, but that does not mean all we're teaching them is to not have sex. There's plenty of other things that are allowable under our law, although it does focus on waiting for sex until you're married. Share this information in your communities, please, and learn more, and this is very key, at stopcsc.org. Stopcsc.org has the whole documentary and all the other information and resources that you may need to fight this. Thank you for protecting the children of Utah and teaching your own children right and wrong as regards to sex. Thank you.